is Castor. Castor has always been a country rich with lush green forests and a fisherman's heaven. Everyone there lives peacefully together as a community, but little did they realize that Castor is overpopulated and most of its population are drug addicts, causing the country's prisons to overflow. It only progressed to get worse when a catastrophic tsunami hit Castor. Castor was forced to take loans to make up for all the damage caused, engulfing them in yet another problem, an economical crisis. The borders were open, causing inflow of yet more illegal immigrants. And this led to a deadly virus into the country, leaving the country in a dreadful state.
Welcome to IMPF 31 2020 news conference. Our headlines: the government is planning to open forest exploitation as a new sector to be strengthened up Castor's economy. Next, the government is introducing penal labor to be applied to its prisoners, especially those imprisoned for drug abuse. Bastion, a new settlement to be developed by the government. The security of a national forest will be tightened to control crossing of the national border. Out of all details will be in few seconds.
Assalamualaikum and a very good evening I bid to all. Thank you for joining our conference today. So, no matter who you are, what you do or where you live, the situation of Castor right now has impacted you severely. Fishermen are unable to go out to sea. Medical support is needed more than ever. Some people worry about their jobs and some people don't even have jobs. Whatever your situation may be, the government is here to help. Today, we'll be highlighting some vital points, some vital issues that require immediate action, such as the question of urbanization, the question of overpopulation, and the virus outbreak, which will be rectified by the 4 solutions that I will provide for you today. My speech will be divided into 2 sections. Firstly is to create a stable economic base for Castor, and secondly to enrich the resources that Castor already has. This will be later continued by my counterpart in the Q&A session. Before I move on to my first part, I would like to introduce you back to the virus that we are facing today, which is IMPF 31. Here is what you need to know about the virus. The virus is a zoonotic disease where its original case claims a cat as the host. These cases, they usually start off as asymptomatic for 3 weeks, meaning that you will not show symptoms until up to 3 weeks. Those symptoms are coughing, high fever, and flu, and they are transmitted through respiratory droplets as the virus targets the respiratory tract, meaning your saliva, your flu, and so on. I would like to remind you to follow the guidelines given by the government, which is the 4S and 2Ws, which is the 4S stands for staying at home, to sanitize, to seek immediate action, and to also self-distance. And the 2Ws, which is to wear a mask, to warn others. But if you tend to forget these policies, do not fear, as a television advertisement would be there to remind you at every time of the day. Now, moving on, as we all know, a tsunami hit Castor 2 years ago, plunging us into an economic crisis. Castor had to even take loans to make ends meet. So, my first part of the speech will be about creating a stable economic base for Castor. So, the first solution I provide to you and will share to you today is to open forest exploitation. Why? Because we want to stabilize the economical crisis. There will be 3 outcomes if we conduct forest exploitation. Firstly, we will get to open a new sector that will help boost our economic state right now. And then secondly, we will actually not rely on major economic activities such as fishing and so on. And it will serve as an advantage for us in the near future if issues like this arise again. Secondly, through forest exploitation, we will get funds to cover the damage done by the tsunami. And thirdly, we will gain land for urbanization, which has been a long dream of the citizens of Castor. Now, rest I assure to you that this would be conducted in a controlled environment where we would conduct selective reforestation. Why? Because we would want to cause that not much harm towards the ecosystem when we want to explore this sector. So we would replant some trees and plants to maintain Castor's forest. Okay. Now, you would maybe be questioning, how will we actually find pioneers to engulf themselves in this new sector in this new sector? So that's why we are introducing penal labor. So what is penal labor? Penal labor is that we're asking prisoners to work. They're not getting paid. Instead, their work will be considered as credit that will help them minimize their sentence and get their sentence reduced. They will not be treated as slaves, but they will be treated as workers. On the question of safety, if we cut down their sentence, will it actually harm the citizens when they get out of the prison, even though their sentence is actually not finished? I can assure you that they would still be monitored until their initial sentence period is over. How? For example, if this person needs to have an initial sentence of 5 years, but his sentence gets cut down to 4 years because of his credit towards penal labor, he would still be monitored for the following 1 year until his initial sentence is complete. Now, we would be splitting penal labor among prisoners into two groups. Firstly is for normal prisoners. So normal prisoners, you can see that what they can do is to make PPE costumes for to help the frontliners in combating the virus. Secondly, they will engulf themselves in reforestation, in planting the trees to still restore the forest. Thirdly, they will help build buildings for our urbanization plan. And lastly, and most importantly, they will help catch stray cats that would later be vaccinated and sheltered for us to combat the virus in a way, because we know that the host for the virus is our cats. Secondly, for our second group is for drug addicts. Now, why we separate them in the first place is because we know that they are not that mentally stable. That means that we need to give them some easier work and that would be more therapeutically based, because we want to improve themselves, because we want to improve their mental state. So some examples of the easier jobs that they would have to do are planting and watering plants. So that means that they will still be involved in in the reforestation plan. And secondly, they would paint buildings, and thirdly, collect rubbish. Now, this would serve as a therapy for them, because firstly, this would divert their attention from thinking too much about drugs, and they would actually do more active work. Secondly, they would feel that they could actually contribute to the society, and they play an active role in maintaining Castor's economics. This would another therapy for this is to also we would also supply drugs for the addicts, but we would actually reduce them from time to time, because we think that those two options are the best way to make these drug addicts sober again. Now, I am done with my first part of the speech. Please, before I continue to the second part, here is an advertisement reminding you about the four S and the 2 Ws that the government has given towards you, for you to apply in your daily life to help yourself and to help us. Welcome back. So, equal urbanization has been a question that has been left unanswered for many years. Apart from that, the safety of Castor too has been questioned by the citizens. Why? Because of the rise of illegal immigrants, drug abuse, and human trafficking. Which is why I introduce you to the second part of my speech, which is to enrich the resources that Castor already has. Now, the first part of my first solution is to create a new residential area. When we create this new residential area, we would like to name it Bastion. We would like to name it Bastion. Now, some characteristics of a bastion is one, to have complete facilities just as equal to the city. So that means that they would have equal hospitals, markets, schools, and post office. Next, it will be home to different economic activities such as forest, fishery, forest exploitation, and more. Why is this good? It's because more people can actually work in. More people will have more places to work. So this would decrease the rate of people not having jobs. And lastly, and most importantly, we want Bastion to have a zero patient policy. This means that no one in Bastion would have shown or contracted symptoms of IMPF 31. Now, this is good because we want to lessen the clusters in Castor. Next, I would like to tell you who would actually be selected and what criteria must one meet for them to be selected to move to Bastion. Now, firstly, they will have to show no symptoms of IMPF 31 because as I said earlier, we want to have a zero patient policy in Bastion. Secondly, we would like to target families with low income. Why? Because as I said earlier, it will be home to a lot of more economic activities that would want workers to work. So we would want them to actually gain jobs. For them to sustain their family. And lastly, we want to target people who have to travel far to meet who have to travel far to their workplaces. So, for example, it's people like who have to cross the border to reach their workplaces. So this would save their time, and this would avoid crossing an interstate border, which will help in combating the virus. Lastly, how we would actually execute this plan is firstly in terms of the area that we want to build Bastion, we would gain the area from forest exploitation, as I said earlier. And secondly, those who are involved in building Bastion would be people who are involved in this penal labor. They would also help out among with people who actually are involved in contractors and so on. Now, lastly, in terms of residents, how we will actually choose these people is if this person think that they would fulfill the criteria needed, like showing no symptoms, having a low income, or traveling far, they will have to fill out a form that is on our website. In conclusion, this idea will have a good approach to the overpopulation issue because we will actually get to even out people living all across Castor. So there would not be overpopulation in a certain area, and we would get to increase the places of people living. And secondly, this would reach the long dream of equal urbanization that has been wanted by the citizens, because before this and right now, even if this plan isn't executed, there will be unequal urbanization where where the government only focuses on bringing up cities and so on, and leaving the rural areas at that. Now, moving on to my final solution under the topic of enriching the resources that Castor already has is to reinforce borders. Why? What we would actually do is we would want to increase the number of guards guarding the border. And secondly, amidst of this outbreak, we would want people who go in and out of the country to are required to quarantine at the sites situated at the border. This would help reduce the number of imported cases coming into the country and would help us in combating the virus. Now, how we would actually increase this number of guards is we would is we will introduce a program called CNSTP, which stands for Caster National Training and Service Program. So how this thing actually works is trainees are required to train for 2 years to be a law enforcer, such as a guard or a police officer. And we would like to focus this program on towards those who are unemployed, because we want people to actually we want every citizen of Castor to play an active role in bringing up the economic status, right? So in the end, we would get guards that actually have credibility, that are actually trustworthy, and this will decrease the rate of imported cases, drug dealers, and illegal immigrants coming into the country, and this will ensure the safety of Castor's citizens. Now, I am done with my two parts of the speech. The speech will now be continued by my counterpart, who would be involved in the Q&A session.
Thank you to our Minister for her speech. Now I will be answering a few questions regarding the proposal stated just now. All right, our first question is, what if riots happen during the penal labor and can't be controlled? Wouldn't it be harmful for citizens, especially with the equipment for work that can be harmful for people? So as we stated just now, we are going to introduce penal labor, which means prisoners will be working for the government and they can reduce their sentence by doing that. So in this way, they will be supervised by people, as in like the prison workers, and we will make sure that no riots will happen, and they will be doing work according to their supervisor, meaning they will follow their supervisor's orders, and they will carry out their work according to the plans that have been outlined. So no riots will occur. Our next question is, how do you suggest to focus on new residential areas if you have economic crisis? How feasible is this towards your policy? So our plan to create new residential areas is aligned with our plans to boost our economical status, such as we have forest exploitation and we have penal labor, and all those will be going on aligned with our plan to build our residential areas. These residential areas will also be built using penal labor. So these areas will be built, and it will also boost our economy as well, because this way, as we said, we are targeting people who live far away from their workplace. So when we move them to a place which is nearer to where they work, they will be allowed to go to work even if, so they don't have to cross any interstate borders, which will boost our economical status, which means more people can work for the government in our projects such as forest exploitation, and they can work in the medical sector. So if our residential areas plan, we get to allow people that could not work before this to carry out their work as normal, which is our aim. The next question is, how do you boost the supply for businesses and demand from consumers with your policies? Our supply, we already have enough supply of, we have forest exploitation, and we are also a country which is known for fisheries. So we already have all the supplies for businesses and demand from consumers. So our caster is mainly known for exporting forest supplies and fisheries only. So we will focus more on those supplies to be exported, and we will make them more, we will try to produce more out of what we have with these economical supplies. Are there any other questions? So our next question is, how can you stop drugs by reducing drugs little by little? Wouldn't it make it harder to help them? So as we know, drug addicts, they rely on drugs to continue their life. If they take a lot, then they will have to take the next day, they will have to take more than they took the day before. Because drugs, they they will copy our body system, and they will make it hard for drug addicts to, they can't coordinate themselves well. So they need, if we stop their intake impulsively, that will make them, it will make their body will need the drugs because they've been taking it for a long time, and the drugs have a lot of side effects to their body. So we have to reduce it little by little so that the effect on them isn't impulsive, but it is tolerable for them, and it will slowly, we will reduce them until they do not need to take the drugs anymore. If we reduce the drugs fully, then the effect on them will be impulsive and might be harmful towards them. So we take this approach little by little to make sure that they recover, to be, so that they do not need to take the drugs at all anymore. Are there any other questions? Next question. Initially, you don't have enough resources to focus on residential areas due to tsunami and economic crisis. Say your economy strengthens gradually, how long would it take before urbanization is executed? So our plan is long term. It may take up to years, maybe about 2 to 3 years to develop one place, but which is why we do this gradually and in the long run. So in the future, if anything happens, Castor will be able to sustain themselves because they are economically stable and they don't have to rely on other countries. So with the resources that we have, that we are growing little by little, in the long run, we will be able to develop a strong and economically stable country. So we will be able to develop these residential areas, which is why we start one by one. We start with Bastion first, and then when we fully develop Bastion, we will develop the next one. Because if we develop them all at the same time, then if we don't have enough funds, then it's going to just end up being halfway. It's going to be 50% done, and it's all going to be 50% done. There's not going to be one single residential area that is fully done. So we're going to practice on building them one by one. And when that one is fully developed, then we can move on to the next one. And this fully developed one will be given full attention to. They will help to build our economy. And even with the building of the residential areas, they will be, at the same time, we can boost our economical stability, because by building these residential areas, we are giving the people who need financial help, we are giving them what they need, and we're giving them opportunities to work. With our programs such as forest exploitation, we can give the people who are not working, we give them opportunities to work, which boosts our economical status. Which is why we're taking this approach to restore Castor to what it used to be before the tsunami and before the pandemic. Hope that answered your question. Are there any other questions? Okay, now since there are no more questions, we can end our press conference here. Thank you for joining us, and we, the government of Castor, are together for the better. Thank you.